Thank you. Please be seated. Now, Ms. Fiorentino, please come forward. Ms. Fiorentino, can you please state your full name for the record?
Carmelina Fiorentino.
And would you like to take the oath or the affirmation?
The oath.
Thank you. Then please take the Bible in your right hand and read out aloud the oath.
I, Carmelina Fiorentino, swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Ms. Fiorentino. Please take your seat. Yes, Mr. Sadler.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Fiorentino, you were summoned to appear before the Perth Casino Royal Commission today,
Yes.
and the Commission provided with that summons a list of topics which will be covered during your examination. And the Commission invited you to prepare a second witness statement in relation to those topics. And do you have a copy of that second witness statement which you prepared?
Yes, I do.
And have you read the contents of that statement?
Yes, I have.
And are the contents true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Fiorentino. Commissioner, I tender the second witness statement of Carmelina Fiorentino, dated 27 August 2021, which has the number GWC 0003.002.0074.
That witness statement with that identifier will be an exhibit in the commission. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sadler. Yes, Ms. Chair.
Ms. Fiorentino, my name is Thea Chi and I'll be Counsel assisting the Commission today. I'd like to start by asking you a few questions first to clarify a couple of points arising from the evidence on the 17th of May. On that date, Mr. Sharp, being Counsel assisting at that time, asked you about a document in relation to paragraph 19.1 of your first witness statement, being a summary paper on the WA gaming legislation. Do you recall that?
I'll just have a read of that. So it's at paragraph
19.1.
19.1. Yes, I recall, including the background. Yes.
All right, can we please have document DLG.0001.0004.0015 on the screen, please? So if you'd just like to have a quick read of that, Ms. Fiorentino. Perhaps if we just scroll through the document. Do you recognise this document, Ms. Fiorentino?
Yes, I do.
Can you confirm whether this is the document that you refer to at paragraph 19.1 of your statement?
Can we continue to scroll down?
Certainly.
Yes, I recall that document.
Do you recall who prepared this paper?
I don't recall who prepared it, no.
You were asked a question by... Thank you, that can go off the screen now, thank you. You were asked a question by Commissioner Jenkins on the 17th of May regarding a letter which attached a report from Grant Thornton and a report from Commissioners of Bank and Real Bank accounts. Do you recall being asked about that?
Can you just refresh my memory the exact question that was asked on those reports?
Certainly. So, Commissioner, so perhaps if we get the transcript up, if this would assist you, it's the transcript from the 17th of May, day 7, hearing room 4 at 10 a.m, and it's page 620.
The electronics are working slightly slower today, as I understand it, because there's some communication problem between us and the remote operator. So just bear with us if there's a delay, that's why.
That's
Thank you,
fine.
Ms Chair.
And page 620, or P620. All right, so if we just got, we've just got a little bit past it, so if we could go up a little bit more. So and stop there, thank you. So where you can see the initialism of 20, where it begins with Commissioner Jenkins, if you'd just like to read that question by Commissioner Jenkins.
Yes, I recall that.
And you can see from your answer that you don't recall that that letter and its attachments were provided to the GWC.
Subsequent to that, what I recall is that was the letter that was provided by Crown Perth the day before our December GWC meeting. Is that the same? I think that's the same letter, because attached to that was the initialism and Grant Thornton report.
So perhaps this might assist you in that. So could we please now have GWC.0002.0016.0345 on the screen? And so this will be the agenda pack for the 15th of December 2020, yes?
Correct. So, yes, I recall now.
All right, can we please now take this document off the public screen, but keep it on Council and Commissioner and Witness screen, please?
Maybe.
Can you just put this document on there?
Right, okay, oh, okay.
Do you still have the document on your screen? Yes.
The agenda,
Oh,
yes, the December 2020 agenda.
All right, so operators, could we please now go to page 449? And slowly flick through for Ms Fiorentino. So do you recall this document, Ms Fiorentino?
I do, yes.
And so do you now recall whether that letter and the attachments were provided to the GWC?
So they were provided as an email attachment to the GWC members after 5 p.m. on the 14th of December 2020, yes.
Thank you. All right, thank you. So that document can now be taken down. I'd like to ask you some questions now about the appointment of the Chief Casino Officer.
Yes.
Since Mr Beecroft ceased acting in that role, who has been in the role?
I recall Nicola Perry was acting in the role of Chief Casino Officer for a period of time. Jermaine, her name, Larcom has been appointed to the CCO role, and Nicola Perry's role the acting has ceased. My understanding is Jermaine is the CCO on secondment.
Thank you. And in relation to Ms Perry, how was the appointment made?
The appointment was made by the Department Director General, and GWC were advised of that.
And was the same process in place for Ms Larcom as well?
Correct.
Have the appointment of have the appointments of Mr Beecroft and Mr Connolly ceased?
Well, those appointments, I think should have ceased, would have ceased, because we've had subsequent CCOs appointed since then. So, yes, I think those appointments have ceased.
Has there been a formal cessation?
Not that I recall, not a formal cessation.
What kind of information was provided to the GWC in the appointment process, if at all?
I don't recall any information other than being advised that this person is the CCO either on an acting basis or a secondment basis. Nothing more than that.
So I take it from your answer that the GWC doesn't have an active role to play in the appointment process.
Correct.
I'd like to ask you some questions about financial matters now. In your witness statement at paragraph 19, or your second witness statement, if that helps, you say the response from the department in relation to the breakdown of the service fee was received in the agenda pack for 27th of August 2021. Do you see that there?
Correct. Yes.
Could we please have document GWC.003.0014.0019 on the screens, please? And you can see that that's an agenda paper dated 11th of August 2021, where the department has provided an explanation for how the professional services fee is calculated.
Yes, this was included in our most recent GWC meeting agenda pack.
And this is the response you refer to in paragraph 19 of your statement.
This is the response. Yes.
So if we just scroll through the document. So we can see that this document, and if you just pause right there, thank you. Oh, a bit too far. Yep, perfect. So we can see that this document provides information by way of certain percentage breakdowns, and you can see that 70% of the total cost of services is expended on liquor functions, and then the other 30% is expended on the racing and gaming functions. So if you could scroll down to page 2, please. And you can see that 28.75% of the 30% is attributable to the costs of providing support to the GWC. I know you didn't draft this paper, Ms. Fiorentino, but it might just be my misunderstanding. But do you consider or understand the reference to RGL being the abbreviation? Is that supposed to be just RG instead of RGL? Just being racing and gaming rather than racing, gaming and liquor?
Look, you'd have to ask whoever prepared this paper, but that RGL refers to racing, gaming and liquor.
Yes. And if we take the figures from just in the paragraph before, where it says there's a breakdown of liquor being 70% and then racing and gaming separate to liquor being 30%, it perhaps doesn't add up, so to speak, if it's meant to be RGL.
Yes.
But perhaps we can ask that to a different witness. All right, and if we look further down the page on page 2, we can see that for the year 2018 to 2019, the percentage allocated to the GWC was 28.726%. Do you see that there?
28.75%.
The target, if you look at the Gaming Commission percentage.
Okay, yes.
Yes, and then for the subsequent year, for 2019 to 2020, it was 39.53%. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Just a moment, Ms. Fiorentino. Could we have the document on the public screens, please? Thank you. In your view, did the department's response adequately explain the breakdown and how the services fee is calculated?
No, not as yet. During the meeting, I did ask the question that this does not give me a sense of what comprises the service fee. I understand the majority of the service fee will be the department's salary and wages, but I don't have a sense of what else that service fee is comprised of. So an action item out of Friday's meeting is that the department will come back with an explanation of what exactly the service fee is comprised of. I just don't have a sense of that from Friday's meeting and from this paper.
Is this the first time that such an explanation about that 28.75% figure has ever been provided to the GWC?
This is the first time it's been provided to this level of detail. Yes, yeah, to this level of detail, yes, but it needs further explanation.
Has the department ever provided any data or information to the GWC as to the differences in those two percentages? So the difference between 28 and the 39% figure?
Not to my recollection, no.
Has the GWC ever raised a concern about the jump in percentage?
No, I don't recall that we have specifically asked for a response from the department. No.
Is the GWC given any choice about the amount of service charge? So perhaps if I use an example, that is the GWC able to ask for more or less services in order to lower or raise the service fee?
So since my appointment in August 2018, the service fee is calculated by the department and provided that as a set figure that this is what it costs us to run the compliance and inspection and audits on behalf of GWC. In my experience since 2018, it's never been something, or it hasn't been something that is negotiable.
Do you think it should be negotiable?
I think we certainly need to know more about how that's comprised so that we can have, as a GWC, we can have a say over whether we think that's adequate. So we need to get the information first to decide, well, is it adequate and should we be negotiating?
In your evidence on the 17th of May, Commissioner Jenkins asked you some questions about the service fee for 2018 and to 2019, and that it was a figure of some $4 million. Do you recall that?
Yes, I recall at the very end being asked questions about the service fee, yes.
Do you consider the service fee to be the GWC's most substantial cost?
Yes, it is, yes.
Do you think that the department should account for that cost directly to the GWC by way of, say, an itemised list or something similar?
Yes, I do, yes.
So I'd now like to ask you some questions about KPIs or key performance indicators. You've previously said in your evidence that there were a number of attempts on your part to have the KPIs reviewed. Do you recall making that statement in oral evidence and in your first statement?
Yes, that's included in my first statement, yes.
At the time you were pushing for that review, what in your view was wrong with the KPIs as they presently stand?
What I could see was that the KPIs presented, whilst they were acceptable for audit purposes, for the Office of the Auditor General's to meet those requirements, I didn't feel that the KPIs addressed what we as a commission should be doing and are we achieving those. So I didn't feel that they were fit for purpose to measure the effectiveness of what the commission needs to be doing. And that was a much bigger piece of work, review, because that was to the heart of what is it that we should be doing first? That's the first question, before asking, well, how do we measure our achievement towards what we should be doing? And I knew it was a bigger piece of work. It wasn't just changing a couple of indicators. It was a bigger review.
What did you express at the GWC meetings?
Initially, so this went back to my first meeting in August 2018, where, I was concerned about approving indicators that, based on working documents that I felt weren't adequate, indicators that I felt weren't fit for purpose, and I expressed my concern during the meeting, during that first one, and subsequent meetings. And I had the confidence to do that because of my chartered accounting background, that I knew what indicators should be, what their purpose is. And I just felt that these indicators satisfied audit requirements but didn't satisfy what we as a Gaming Commission should be looking at in terms of how are we measuring the effectiveness of what we should be doing.
So you've mentioned now that your experience as a chartered accountant. With that experience, what should these key KPIs look at?
Well, the first step is what is it that the Gaming Commission has as its purpose? What is its remit? And it's not something I can answer right now other than pointing to the Gaming Wagering Commission Act. So, broadly, that's what we should be doing. Well, let's put that now into quantifiable indicators, and let's measure that. It is a big review. And it's obviously going to happen now as a result of this Royal Commission, but it wasn't something that could be done by an accountant in the department. It really needed a very comprehensive review.
And so how much progress has been made on the KPI issue since May?
None.
I have some questions now I'd like to ask you about delegations.
Yes.
Does the GWC have a single register where you can see all the delegations that have been issued?
I haven't seen it, so I don't know. I haven't seen it myself.
Do you know if there's a GWC policy that requires exercises of delegation to be reported?
Yes, well, certainly with the any exercise of delegation by the CCO, it was reported in every agenda meeting as a standing item.
Could we please have GWC.002.0016.0367 on the screens, please? So you can see that this is the agenda pack for the 23rd of March 2021, and you can see that you're listed as being present. Can we go to page 5, please? So right there is a little, if you scroll a little bit further down, thank you. So we can see the resolution to appoint Mr. Beecroft as the CCO and to delegate powers to the Director of Strategic Regulation. Can you see that?
Yes.
I know you said in your witness statement that the April 2020 delegation was the only delegation you were aware of. Having seen this paper now, do you now recall this delegation?
Yes. Yes.
So looking there again at the person to whom the delegation is made, being the position is Director of Strategic Regulation. Do you understand that to be a reference to a GWC position or a departmental position?
That title is a departmental position title.
And in relation to the April 2020 delegation that you've referred to in your witness statement, that was to the Deputy Director General, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
that's what I referred to in my second witness statement, yes.
And do you understand that to be a GWC or a departmental position?
So the the Deputy Director General title is a departmental position title.
If a delegation is issued to a person by reference to their departmental role, do you accept that they would be only entitled to exercise that power while acting in their departmental role?
Can you rephrase? Sorry, I'm not understanding that question.
Certainly. So if a delegation is issued to a person and the person's role is set out in the delegation and it's a departmental position, do you agree that they would be exercising that delegated power while in the capacity as their departmental role? So Mr. Beecroft in this example would be using his delegated power in his role as the Director of Strategic Regulation.
My understanding with this resolution was that Mark Beecroft, in his appointment as Chief Casino Officer, that the delegation was to Chief Casino Officer in this resolution, not to the Director of Strategic Regulation. It was to his position as Chief Casino Officer.
Are you aware of any delegations that have been revoked?
I just don't recall which ones have been revoked, but clearly people who are not in those positions any longer wouldn't be able to have those delegated powers, but I'm just not recalling formal revocation of delegations.
All right, I'd like to ask you some questions about conflicts of interest now. So you've given evidence previously that Mr. Connolly disclosed he had a personal relationship with Mr. Marai, who was Crown's General Manager of Legal Compliance. Do you recall giving that evidence?
Yes.
And you said at the time that it gave you quite a level of discomfort. Do you remember saying that on the 17th of May? Did the disclosure of that friendship cause you to reconsider the impartiality of past advice given by Mr. Connolly?
It certainly did cause me to rethink past advice. However, my recollection is that Mr. Connolly presented papers and briefing papers to the Commission, but wasn't party to the decisions. That was up to members.
Has it made you reconsider any advice that he has given now?
Look, it certainly caused me to reflect. Yes, of course, it has caused me to reflect.
How was the conflict managed by the GWC, if at all?
At that time, I recall it was noted. I looked at the chair. He clearly was aware of the relationship, and nothing further.
Nothing further was done.
I don't recall anything further being done.
What is the GWC doing now to manage conflicts between departmental or GWC staff and Crown staff?
So there's a detailed conflict of interest register being maintained and updated. Any new members are required to complete it. and also being aware not only of actual conflict of interest but also perceptions of conflict of interest as being of critical importance.
So aside from them being noted, are there any policies considering to be put in place to...
There is a
manage-
yes, there is a
Yes.
conflict of interest policy. Yes, that's my understanding. Yes.
I'd like to ask you some questions now about EGMs, or electronic gaming machines. My first line of questioning is in relation to Resolution 120 of 2019, which I can see that you've made some comments about at paragraphs 65 to 66 of your witness statement.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that there?
Yes.
All right. Could we please have GWC.0002.0016.0285 on the screens, please? I think that's Ms. Fiorentino's statement. Yes, that's the one, thank you. So could we go to page 2, please? Thank you. Right, oh, thank you. That's great, thank you, just right there. All right, so we can see here that we have a resolution of the GWC in essentially approving 2 changes to the WA appendix to the EGM national standard. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Yes. So can we please go to page 1 of GWC.0002.0016.0281? And just a quick question while we're waiting for that to come up. Ms. Fiorentino, the reference to the DDG there, is that Mr. Michael Connolly?
The Deputy Director General at that time, July 2019, was Michael Connolly, correct?
Thank you. So this, we can see that this is the agenda item to which that resolution relates. And if we just look at the grey highlighted section where it says recommendation, we can see that it also relates to essentially the 2 charges that was resolved at the GWC meeting. Do you see that?
Yes.
So can we please go to page 2 of that document? Thank you. And if we look at the second last paragraph there, we can see that an amended version of the WA appendix and corresponding sections of the EGM policy refers to an attachment 5. Do you see that?
Yes.
All right, could we please go to page 32 now? So this is attachment 5. And then if we scroll down to page 33, we can see a number of marked up changes to the policy.
Yes.
And you can see that there are a number of changes made that were not captured in the recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go to page 3, oh, beg your pardon. So could we now please have GWC.0001.0007.0192 on the screen? And go to page 3. So this is the final policy that was approved after the changes, and you can see that it is signed by the Deputy Chairman. At this time was the Deputy Chairman, Mr Michael Connolly.
Deputy Director General was Michael Connolly, correct?
So the signature there, is that Mr Michael Connolly's signature?
I don't know whose signature that is. I know the Deputy Director General is Michael Connolly. I don't know whose signature that is.
All right. So could we please have page 1 of GWC.0002.0016.0281 on the screen together with GWC.000.0016.0285, page 2, side by side? Thank you. And in relation to the agenda paper, so that's on the right side of the screen, operator, would you mind just scrolling to page 3, please? Or perhaps page 33, that's my mistake. Thank you. All right, Ms Fiorentino, do you see that the removal of the prohibition on multi-directional winning combinations was not expressly authorised by the resolution the GWC adopted?
So on the right-hand side, you're referring to point
number
4.
That's correct.
That's not included in the resolution, correct?
I understand that these agenda packs are often hundreds of pages long and that the GWC members often only have a very short amount of time to review these documents. We have seen that attachment 5 was cross-referenced at the start of the agenda pack in Mr Connolly's overview of the changes. Do you normally read every page of an agenda pack?
I normally read every agenda paper. There are normally attachments and I'll certainly review them. I won't necessarily read every page of the attachments, but certainly the agenda papers themselves, I read every page, yes.
Because of the breadth of the agenda packs then, do you typically rely upon the recommendation at the start of the agenda item to perhaps say, characterise the substance of the agenda item that follows?
I certainly read the recommendation. I do not simply follow the recommendation, which is the point of the members having a meeting and discussing it.
Do I take it then that you did not read attachment 5 in detail?
I certainly didn't read that note 4 was included, and certainly our resolution didn't refer to note 4 as being a change to the appendix.
To what extent did you rely on Mr Connolly in making this approval?
Mr Connolly certainly provided the briefing. The members, I recall, we had a number of meetings where we discussed this change in EGM game speed. It was not a decision we took lightly. And my understanding was the resolution was clear that it was to change game speed only where the games had additional features, so that game speed could be at 3 seconds, but the additional game features would extend it to 5 seconds or more. and removing reference to the independence of outcomes. That was my understanding of the resolution, and that was confirmed when draft minutes are circulated, that each of us members review and approve those minutes. So I didn't realise that item 4, and certainly that wasn't my understanding, that item 4 would be deleted from the appendix.
So paragraph 67 of your witness statement, you've said that there were robust discussions in relation to the amendments to the NWA appendix, and those discussions took place between March 2019 and July 2019. So those robust discussions didn't pick up on this multi-directional line removal?
I don't recall the discussions focusing on this. The discussions were very much around the speed of play and the impact to ensure that we still maintained compliance with the integrity of the machines not being poker machines. This was a very big focus for us members, was the speed of play.
And so Mr Conley didn't mention this removal
I
discussions?
Just don't recall it. No, I don't recall it.
So Ms. Fiorentino, when did you gain the understanding that multi-line play was now available on EGMs in Perth?
Sorry, what multi-line play, as in?
As in, you see there 4.3 was multi-line play, multi-directional winning combinations are not acceptable. And I'm not quite sure what else it says. Can we scroll over just a bit to see? For example, and then it's got some examples. So I'm right now that is deleted from the appendix, Ms. Chair?
I beg your pardon, Commissioner?
Well, that 4 has been deleted from the appendix.
That's correct. So if we go back to the final policy that was approved.
Yes. So that's what I'm asking you. When did you know that in fact multi-line playing was now available for EGMs?
What, as a result of this process of going back, and having to review all this.
And how long ago would that have been? What, in the last few days or before then?
Oh, I would say in the last, well, certainly in the preparation of my witness statement, yes, it became very clear to me.
Your second one or your first one?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Chair.
All right, Ms Fiorentino, I'd like to ask you some more specific questions about the change in game speed from 5 seconds to 3 seconds, and you've referred to that in your witness statement of paragraph 67. Thank you, operators, we can take those documents down. Could we please have GWC.0002.0016.0268 on the screen, please? Do you recall seeing this paper, Ms Fiorentino?
Yes.
Yes. Can we please go to page 77? Do you recognise this letter?
Yes.
So this letter, in essence, recommends, among other things, that the speed of play be reduced from 5 seconds to 3 seconds.
Yes.
And if we go to page 83, please. So we can see that this letter includes a section on responsible service of gambling. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And in the first paragraph, you will see that the last beg your pardon. Can you see where, towards the end of the passage, it says RSK framework can be reiterated if the Commission thought it necessary?
Is that in the?
I beg your pardon, I've confused you. So the first paragraph underneath the responsible service of gambling. So, and then the last sentence, it says, we are nevertheless more than willing to reiterate this information if the Commission feels this is necessary.
Yes, I can see that.
Did the GWC request any information relating to the responsible service of gambling framework following this letter?
The responsible service of gambling framework that Crown had in place, so they presented it at that December 2018 meeting. I don't recall that we asked for that to be reiterated.
Did the GWC give any consideration to the responsible service of gambling when approving this 5-second to 3-section reduction?
Yes.
What
yes.
was the content of that discussion?
So there was discussion around the key elements in the WA appendix towards protecting addictive or preventing addictiveness and gambling related harm from EGMs. So it was something that was very important to us members that this change didn't lead to an increase in addictiveness and problem gambling relating to EGMs. So yes, we definitely discussed it as members during a number of meetings.
Was there any reliance on any literature, any sort of responsible service of gambling or problem gambling journal articles or anything that an external source of information that could help you in your decision making?
I don't recall that, nothing external other than to rely on what was in the WA appendix speed of play to ensure that that we remained close to that speed of play, at that speed of play of the 5 seconds for EGM games. And what was presented to us was that because of the changes in technology around EGMs, that EGMs that had additional play features, the game speed was extending beyond 5 seconds, and that was the whole basis for the change. And so with the change to 3 seconds, the additional game features extended the game to at least 5 seconds.
Part of the GWC's role is to approve games that are to be played in the casino, is that correct?
Correct.
And that includes EGMs?
Yes.
Does the GWC have to consider a significant number of applications for EGMs?
There would be a regular, at each meeting there would be a number of EGMs. I recall being presented. They had to follow the Crown had to present those new EGMs for approval. Yes, I recall that.
Were there certain things that you had to consider when considering applications for EGMs?
Yes, yeah. Appearance of play, return to player, interaction by the player. These were all measures towards ensuring that the EGMs were not poker machines.
And why can the GWC not approve poker machines?
It's specifically prohibited in the Casino Control Act.
And how does the GWC distinguish between an EGM and a poker machine?
Well, that's stipulated in the WA Appendix Guide to the national standards.
Is that your understanding to be the difference between an EGM and a poker machine, that it's located in the WA Appendix?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Have you or any member of the GWC taken any steps to inform yourselves of any literature now about problem gambling or the responsible service of gambling?
So I did attend the Australian Casino Gamblers Conference that was held in Fremantle in May of 2019. I recall discussions with other regulators who were present there. Whilst it wasn't evidence research that was provided, they explained the issues that they were having with problem gambling in clubs and venues which held poker machines, and the fact that we didn't have that here, and that we in WA were following, I guess, a better way of protecting against problem gambling, but it wasn't research or external literature, no.
Have you or any other member of the GWC ever asked Crown for copies of any material regarding problem gambling or the responsible service of gambling that they may have in their possession?
No, I don't recall that.
You said in your witness statement that the GWC approved the use of cashless payments to purchase gaming chips at designated areas and to purchase tickets for use on gaming machines. Do you recall that? That's paragraph 54 of your statement.
Yes. Yes.
Can we please have GWC.0002.0016.0266 at page 218 on the screen, please? Thank you. Is this the agenda item in relation to paragraph 54 of your witness statement?
Well, I refer to the 28th of May 2019, so it's subsequent to this.
Yes, which would have been the resolution.
Correct.
So this is the agenda pack for the agenda item for that resolution.
Well, I refer to a GWC meeting on the 28th of May 2019. So this was discussed at a number of meetings. So this refers to 14th of February 2019.
All right, but there is a policy in place that was approved by the GWC.
Yes, relating to the use of FPOS and contactless debit cards, correct.
And when this was approved, was there any consideration of responsible service of gambling requirements by the GWC?
Yes, we definitely considered it and put in place measures that the cards that patrons used had to be debit cards. They were not allowed to be credit cards. There were limits on daily withdrawal of cash. There needed to be RSG signs and notifications for patrons. So whilst we were aware that society is moving towards a cashless economy and society, we also wanted to ensure that we were doing this in a responsible manner.
So those factors that you just listed just then, was that arising out of a presentation by Crown?
I recall these were initiatives that us members requested. I I don't recall whether they arose from Crown, but I certainly know that they were important measures that, as members, we stipulated these had to be the parameters for use of EFTPOS and contactless payments.
All right, so in your witness statement at paragraph 55, you've set out a number of restrictions that the approval was subject to, and then you refer to, or what's cited there, is GWC.002.0016.0307. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Yes, so can we bring that document up, please? Do you recognise this PowerPoint presentation, Ms. Fiorentino?
Yes, that was presented to the Gaming Commission, yes.
Yes, and if we go to slide 2, please. So we can see a number of restrictions that they've set out in dot point form in
Yes,
their proposal, which are more or less quite similar to what you were listing out before.
yes, they are.
Was this PowerPoint an assurance for you and the GWC when making your decision to allow cashless payments at the casino?
Can you rephrase that question?
Were you assured by the factors that they set out and the restrictions that Crown has set out,
Yes.
such
yes.
that you were more confident in making a resolution to allow cashless gaming at the casino?
Yes.
Did Crown explain pragmatically how they would ensure how these sorts of gambling restrictions would be adhered to?
Well, certainly the RSG side of it, they explained how that was going to happen. We requested reports, that there would be a reporting on this. So we didn't just simply rely on Crown. We wanted to ensure that this was working effectively and requested reports once this had been put in place.
So did you ask Crown how practically some of these restrictions would work or be monitored? So, for example, thank you. So, for example, you can see that there is a 500 daily limit there.
Yes.
Was there any information or any question by the GWC as to when a day starts and finishes?
No, I don't recall that, no.
Do you agree that that's important, given that could be the difference between a $500 in a 24-hour period or potentially even $1,000, depending on how a day is defined?
Yes.
And if we have a look at another example, there's a $400 transaction limit. And it seems to be silent as to whether it's per day, per hour. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Do you consider it important to make these sorts of inquiries about the practical side of these sorts of restrictions?
Yes, yes.
All right, could we please have, that can be taken off the screens, could we please now have GWC.0002.0016.0297 on the screens, please? Thank you. So these are the minutes for the GWC meeting on the 25th of February 2020. Can you see that?
Yes.
On page 10, thank you, you can see that the GWC resolved to have the Problem Gambling Support Services Committee report to the GWC. So that's point I. So request the Problem Gambling Support Services Committee to provide a briefing on the meeting outcomes to the Commission after each meeting.
Yes, I can see that.
And we have a look at the agenda item for that resolution. So that's GWC.0002.0016 .0016.0296 at page 257. So you can see, do you recognise that agenda paper?
Yes.
So you can see the recommendation does not, in fact, contain a reporting requirement.
No, it doesn't.
Do you recall any discussions that were had between members of the GWC as to the reason for including essentially a reporting requirement? If that was what was passed in resolution?
Can we refer back to the resolution again for that?
Yes, could we please go back to the minutes? So that's GWC.0002.0016.0297 on page 10.
I just can't. So what is the question? Can you repeat it?
Were there any discussions between GWC members as to the reason for essentially including a reporting requirement?
Well, there certainly would have been discussion to have arrived at that resolution, but I just can't recall what those discussions exactly were going back to February 2020.
Has the Problem Gambling Support Services Committee since reported to the GWC in accordance with that resolution?
Not to my recollection. No.
Has the GWC implemented any policies in relation to the Problem Gambling Support Services Committee?
So can you elaborate on the question?
Are you aware of any materials that the GWC have drafted themselves in the form of a policy relating to problem gambling support services?
No, I'm not aware of that. No.
You've stated in your witness statement that the GWC receives a summary of Crown Perth gambling statistics for the previous month. That's a paragraph 43 of your statement.
Correct.
This is a standing agenda item.
Yes, it is.
Why are these statistics provided to the GWC?
Well, this is related to responsible service of gambling.
Does the fact that they're provided to the GWC suggest that the GWC believes it has a role to play in ensuring that Crown's responsible service of gambling systems are adequate?
Yes, yes.
So what is that role?
Well, we have a role. One of the functions of the Gambling and Wagering Commission is the responsible service of gambling within WA, and that includes the casino.
Are the statistics reviewed by the GWC?
There's certainly, yes, they're considered, they're reviewed, they're noted by the GWC at each meeting.
Are they ever discussed?
Yes.
Is there ever a response by the GWC to the RSG statistics?
If there is, it would be noted in the minutes, but I certainly can't. I do recall actually as a result of COVID during 2020, we did notice an increase in a number of these problem activities. and we requested Crown to provide an explanation, which they did. So yes, we do discuss where we can see variances or large anomalies occurring month to month.
And what does the GWC do with those statistics?
In what way? What do you mean?
If you identify that there is a problem or something of concern, have you, for example, written to Crown to ask further information, or what happens if you see something concerning in the statistics?
Well, that's certainly what we did during 2020 post the COVID lockdown, when the Crown Casino was allowed to trade again. We asked when we could see a pattern of behaviour that was escalating in these statistics, we asked Crown to provide an explanation, which they did.
And then what happened?
And nothing further.
So the GWC did nothing further after receiving a response from Crown?
Not to my recollection, no.
Was that because Crown's response was satisfactory, or because it dispelled your concerns?
We understood Crown had explained that there was a significant increase in gambling, I guess, antisocial behaviour as a result of additional funds within WA. People were unable to travel, so this did result in a change in these problem behaviours that were reported to the Gaming Commission, and we understood that and noted it.
So were any policies created subsequent to your concerns being raised to Crown in relation to responsible service of gambling?
Not policies, no, I don't recall that.
No other measures in place that are not formal policies, but mechanisms that have been put in place to address the concerns that you had in relation to the statistics on responsible service of gambling?
No.
At present, does the GWC intend to create any new policies in relation to responsible service of gambling?
So what do you mean? Can you expand on that?
Is the GWC at present currently considering the creation of any policies to address problem gambling or responsible service of gambling?
So certainly in regards to problem gambling committee, we now have a GWC member who sits on that committee. I understand the committee now does meet regularly, and the GWC member will report back to the GWC on measures, harm minimisation measures implemented by the committee.
Which member is that?
Katie Hodson-Thomas.
But at current, you haven't, the Problem Gambling Support Services Committee hasn't reported back to the GWC?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Right, we're just moving on to my last topic for today, Ms. Fiorentino. It's just in relation to the Ernst & Young review submission, and a draft of which was completed in May 2021. Are you aware of that draft report?
Yes, I am.
Could we please have GWC.0004.009.002 on the screens at slide 12? First, Ms. Fiorentino, are you aware of why the report is in draft?
No, I'm not. I'm not aware. No.
Do you agree with the report's diagnoses and solutions offered? And these are the detailed findings that they've set out from slide 12. Do you agree with their diagnoses and solutions offered?
They've provided those recommendations without considering the legislative constraints that we operate within. So I do not agree with every single one of the recommendations. Certainly there are some that are of merit, where they refer to a skills matrix for GWC members, where they refer to, separation of chair of the GWC from the director of the department. These are all good recommendations, but some of it is outside the remit of the legislation that we have to work within at the moment.
Were GWC members interviewed for the purposes of that report?
No.
Did you consider that to be a problem?
Yes.
Why?
Given that the report scope was a review, as I understand it, a review of the regulation of gambling within WA, I think it would have been very necessary and appropriate to interview each of the GWC members towards this, preparing this report.
Could we go to slide 14, please? So if we look at recommendation 2.1.6, can you see that, Ms. Fiorentino? It's just in the middle recommendation column. It's the second recommendation.
Yes.
And that deals with relationships with third parties and a recommendation to that effect. Would you agree with that recommendation?
So where are we, Ms.
I beg your pardon, Commissioner. Recommendation 2.1.6, so it's halfway, it's essentially in the middle of the page.
That's a very broad recommendation, which, on reading this right at this minute, I don't think I can provide a comment. Can you narrow the scope of your question?
Oh, I was simply asking your views on this particular recommendation.
So, to my understanding, this refers to memorandums of understanding with other organisations, such as AUSTRAC, such as WA Police. Certainly, I think it would be very helpful to have memorandums of understanding with other organisations so that we can work together in regulating gambling in WA.
Thank you. I've got no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Does any council wish to? Yes.
Yes, please, Commissioner. Ms. Fiorentino, my name is Seward and I represent the department. I just have a couple of brief questions. You were asked some questions by Council Assisting about the Problem Gambling Support Services Committee and to the extent to which they report back or you receive any papers reporting on their progress to Commission meetings. Is it the case that in the recent August meeting and the one before that, the July meeting of this year, there were some papers put up by the departmental officers summarising what the committee had been doing in the last few months?
Look, I recall there was a paper presented about who's a member or which organisation is a member of that committee, and that GWC also has a member on that committee. It was, yes, there was a briefing pack within an agenda, either July or I think it was the July 2021 meeting.
And so if there were some agenda packs put up, we would look at the agenda pack and we'd be able to identify the papers that were put up.
If they're included, they will be in that agenda pack, yes.
Thank you. Now, you were also asked some questions at the beginning of your evidence today about the departmental service charge.
Yes.
And how in the recent August meeting, which was just last week, there was a paper put up that you were showing that paper and that provided an explanation of how the service is calculated. Excuse me. Do you remember the paper that was put up?
Yes,
by
I
Council
do.
Assisting? Yes. And you asked some questions about that. So do I understand the position is that that explanation has been provided, but the Commission members, including yourself, had further questions?
Correct.
And so they were asked at the meeting last week?
Last Friday, correct.
Yes, and the process now is that the departmental officers will report back at the next meeting with answers to the questions that were raised.
Correct.
And it was put to you by Councillor Sisting that an itemised list of how the service charge is calculated would be of assistance for you to receive.
Yes.
Was that part of the request that was made last Friday to the department?
So, yes, I did specifically request for an itemised, a listing of what the service charge is comprised of, to which the percentage is applied to that. So that was requested at Friday's meeting.
And do you understand that that percentage, in broad terms, is a percentage of the total cost to the department? And it's the total cost to the department of running the entire racing, gaming and liquor division. And from that cost of running that division, the percentage that represents the cost of supporting the GWC is what the GWC is charged.
That's my
That's your
understanding.
broad understanding
Yes.
of how the service fee is calculated.
Yes.
And the questions you have are what comprises the cost of running the racing, gaming and liquor division of the department.
That's right.
No further questions, thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Wren.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Fiorentino, my name is Ren and I'm representing the Crown entities. I just had a few more questions on responsible service of gambling. I'll try not to repeat anything that you've already covered. In your second statement, you explain your understanding of Crown Perth's responsible service of gaming framework, and that was based on a presentation that was given by Crown Perth to GWC in December 2019.
Yes, I refer to that in my statement, but
It's paragraph 49, if you would like to have a look at it.
yes,
During your time on the GWC, did the GWC give any directions or recommendations as to particular steps that Crown Perth could take to improve its RSG framework?
no, I don't recall that we did that. No.
And are you aware if the department conducted any audits or inspections with respect to Crown Perth's responsible service of gambling framework or its RSG team?
No, I'm not. I don't think. Well, I don't recall any specific inspections around that the department did on the responsible service of gambling. No.
And did the GWC ever direct the department to conduct inspections or audits with respect to responsible service of gambling during your time on that?
Not to my knowledge. No.
I just want to talk about the gaming machine national standard. It sets out the standards to guide manufacturers in the design of gaming machines and gaming machine software. All right. And there's a WA appendix to it, and that sets out WA specific requirements that are in addition to or different from the national standard.
Yes.
Is that correct? And it's the GWC that's responsible for setting the content of the WA appendix.
That's my understanding. Yes.
And developers of new EGM games have to have games tested and certified by an independent accredited testing facility as complying with those standards in the WA appendix.
Yes.
And amongst other things, are the requirements of the national standard and the WA appendix intended to support the objective of promoting responsible service of gambling?
Can you rephrase that? What do you mean?
The requirements set out in the national standard and the WA appendix is one of the rationales behind some of those requirements, addressing problem gambling and seeking to promote responsible service of gambling.
So my understanding is that the WA appendix, the guidelines there are towards responsible service of gambling and ensuring that the EGMs within the casino are not poker machines.
And do I understand from your responses to Councillor Sisting earlier this afternoon that the GWC never undertook any analysis of the research as to the impact of particular design elements of EGMs with respect to problem gambling?
Which research are you
Any
referring?
research? Did the GWC undertake any analysis of any research as to which particular elements of game design might cause problems for problem gambling in EGMs?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Did the GWC ever look at any research or analysis as to what particular elements of EGMs might be a problem with respect to increasing the addictiveness of EGMs?
Since my appointment, I don't recall any of that research being undertaken by the GWC.
And
I think,
has
sorry,
the,
just to assist, hopefully, Ms. Wren. So I think the question was also whether GWC looked itself at research that maybe third parties had done into the addictiveness of EGMs.
So, certainly not to my knowledge while I've been on the GWC. I don't recall seeing any of that analysis, no.
thank you, Commissioner, for clarifying that. Thank you, Ms. Fiorentino.
Thank you.
So has the GWC given any consideration as to what further requirements or what further elements should be included in the WA appendix to address problem gambling with respect to the design of EGMs?
No, not. I don't recall that there's anything further that the GWC's requested to add to the WA appendix towards reducing gambling harm in EGM players.
And do you agree that it's the GWC's responsibility to determine and mandate appropriate requirements to address our responsible service of gambling concerns for the design of EGM games in WA?
So my understanding is that the WA appendix, those guidelines are towards reducing addictiveness of EGMs, and as GWC, as a group, we ensure that that's adhered to.
And I think you accepted a little earlier that the GWC is also responsible for the content of the WA appendix.
Yes.
Okay. And during your time in the GWC, Crown Perth regularly presented to the GWC seeking in principle approval for particular EGM games?
Yes, that's true.
And do you agree that Crown Perth put forward those games for approval on the understanding that the new games would be designed by the manufacturers in accordance with the requirements of the WA Appendix and National Standard?
Yes, that was my understanding.
And that they would be tested and certified as complying with them?
Yes, that was my understanding.
Did the GWC itself, in considering approval of individual EGM games, ever conduct or commission any assessment of whether that particular game might have features that would encourage problem gambling?
So, can you repeat that?
Yes, so in considering whether to approve individual EGM games that were put up by Crown Perth, did the GWC ever conduct or commission any analysis as to whether there were features of that particular EGM game that were of concern with respect to problem gambling?
No, I don't recall that.
And And has the GWC ever directed Crown Perth to conduct an assessment of EGMs after their introduction at the Perth Casino to assess whether they might have features that encourage problem gambling?
Other than the inspections and audits that were conducted by the department, I don't recall any other further investigations by the GWC into EGMs and their addictiveness. No.
Thank you. I'm just going to move on to a different topic relating to the amendments to the WA Appendix in 2019. If I could ask the operator to bring up GWC.0002.0016.0276. And it's page, we'll just go to that first. So it's the minutes of the meeting of the GWC on the 28th of May 2019. And I think in your statement you said that these proposed amendments were the subject of robust discussions between the GWC members between March 2019 and July 2019. And this particular meeting is in May 2019, just to orientate you. If we could go to page 2. And the fourth paragraph under item 5.1, it records that the matter of amendment to the WA Appendix to the National Standard for Gaming Machines has been deferred to the June meeting to permit expert technical advice to be sought.
Yes, I can see that.
Do you recall that?
Look, this goes back to May 2019. I mean, the minutes refer to that, so it's obviously happened, but I don't recall that exact discussion point.
Do you recall if any expert technical advice was in fact sought?
I just don't recall. I don't remember.
Do you recall seeing any expert technical advice or relying on any expert technical advice with respect to these amendments?
I really don't recall. I just don't.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council? No? Ms. Fiorentino, I've got a few questions just to clarify some of your evidence. The conflict of interest declared by Mr. Connolly, in your statement you say you became aware of Mr. Connolly's relationship with Mr. Preston and Mr. Hume more recently through media related to this commission. Can you give me a bit of a time frame when that was and the context of that?
I think it was once those individuals gave evidence to this Royal Commission and the media reporting from that I became aware that in fact Michael Connolly's close personal relationship was extended to Joshua Preston and
Mr. Hume.
Hume, yes.
And do you think Mr. Connolly should have disclosed those relationships to the GWC too?
Yes.
Do you think that in the absence of him doing so, that the Director General or the casino, well, it would have been the Director General, if he'd have known about them, he should have mentioned them to the GWC?
To the GWC, yes.
Now that would have been, was that Mr. Ord at the time?
Correct.
I suppose he had gone by the time that these matters were brought to your attention.
So October 2020 was when Mr. Connolly declared the relationship, the friendship he had with Claude Moraes. That was October 2020. and Duncan Ord was no longer chair from early this year, I think March 2021. So
It was after that you became aware of these relationships.
correct, yes.
Just tell me, in terms of GWC's conflict of interest policy and procedures now, is there a form that, say, the casino control officer has to fill out in relation to conflicts, or is it only still a sort of a reactive situation whereby if the casino control officer thinks he or she has a conflict of interest, they then report it to the GWC? Do you understand the difference? That there might be a form, once you become a casino control officer, you might have to fill out a form whereby you have to answer questions like, do you have a friendship or relationship with any employee at the casino? There might be that kind of procedure. Alternatively, there might be one which just requires the casino control officer to advise the GWC if they have what they regarded as a conflict of interest. And I'm just wondering what the situation is.
There's definitely a heightened reporting requirement on conflicts of interest, actual and perceived. So in fact, to err on the side of caution and report all, even potential conflicts of interest, perceived or otherwise, to the GWC. That's my understanding.
Do you know whether there is a policy and procedure whereby someone who commences to work on behalf of the GWC, for example, the casino control officer, has to complete a form which interrogates them, in effect, as to what, if any, conflicts they might have?
So that would be within the conflict of interest register. That there's completion of that required, declaration to the GWC meeting. All of that has to happen. Yes.
In respect of the changes that occurred in, I think it's 2019, to decrease the speed of play or rate of play, and also, which, as we're now aware, also allowed multi-line betting. Now, you understand, your evidence is that you've only become aware recently that multi-line betting was permitted as a result of those changes. Is that your evidence?
So I did not realise. My understanding was exactly that the resolution we agreed to and that was passed and was confirmed in the minutes was that there was a change to the speed of play and the independence of outcomes. I certainly didn't go back and audit and check what changes had been done subsequent. So,
all right, that's fine. What I'm getting to is something a bit different, which is, now that you are aware of that, do you intend to do anything in relation to it?
So, yes, we need to. Yes, we do need to do something about. And I need to speak. So I haven't spoken to my other fellow GWC members on that, whether that was their understanding as well.
And there's an aspect of that I want to clarify. That is it your evidence that the removal of the prohibition to multi-line betting was not discussed by the GWC and resolved, or you simply cannot recall?
You know, I can't recall. And so I rely on what's in the minutes, and I don't see it there in our resolution. And I know our meeting minutes, certainly I scrutinise them, and each of the members has an opportunity to review them before they're confirmed. So the fact that that's not included in the resolution leads me to the conclusion that it wasn't something that was supposed to be approved, that deletion. So, but I just don't recall that exact discussion.
Next, in relation to the reduction in the speed of play, just want to understand what you understand by the resolution. So, for example, after GWC's resolution and when it was implemented, what would you understand would be the speed of play on a losing game?
So what do you mean by
Well,
losing?
someone pushes a button to start a game and they lose.
Mm-hmm.
How long would it be before they could then push the button to recommence a new game?
5 seconds. If it doesn't have any additional features like, free games, it still needs, it then needs to be a 5 second game. That's my understanding.
So then on a winning game without any extra features, how long would you say that the game, it has to be between when they push the button to start the game and when they can recommence the next game?
Okay, so my understanding, and again, this is my limited understanding because it's quite a technical area, but my understanding is whether it's a winning game or a losing game, if it doesn't have additional game features, it's supposed to be at least a minimum of 5 seconds, unless it's got the additional game features, in which case it reduces to 3 seconds. And the additional game features extend that game to at least 5 seconds. That's my, I guess, limited understanding.
As a result of those changes and others that have taken place, what do you see now as the distinction between a Western Australian EGM and a poker machine?
So my understanding, a poker machine, there's continuous play, whereas in WA there needs to be player initiation. Speed of play is much less than 5 seconds with a poker machine. Return to player is less than 90%, whereas in WA it has to be 90%. And there's also the appearance. My understanding is poker machines, they're allowed to have the spinning reel appearance. In WA where it's not allowed.
Thank you.
That's what I understand as the distinctions.
Thank you. Moving on to the Problem Gambling Support Services Committee, what do you understand to be the relationship between that committee and the GWC?
So the GWC contributes funding to that committee. We now have a member who's on that committee, and the committee is there to support gambling helplines, promote awareness around problem gambling and help available. That's my understanding.
So do I understand from that you don't think that the Problem Gambling Support Services Committee is a subcommittee of the GWC?
I now understand it is a subcommittee of the GWC. Yes, because we received a briefing paper on that. I think it would have been the July or the August, the most recent meeting, that it is a subcommittee, and hence we have a member on that subcommittee.
And before that, before you received that briefing paper, what was your understanding?
I knew it existed, but not that it was a subcommittee of the GWC, no.
So as a subcommittee, do you know whether the GWC has delegated any of its powers to the subcommittee or its chair as chair of the Problem Gambling Support Services Committee?
Delegated powers of the GWC. No, I'm not aware that we've delegated powers to the subcommittee.
So I'm just wondering then, on what basis does the subcommittee act?
Good question. Good question. My understanding is it's part of our remit towards gambling harm minimisation, that the subcommittee supports these initiatives, the Gambling Aware and Hotline and counselling services.
In light of the fact that you've and the other GWC members might have only recently been advised that it is a subcommittee of the GWC, has that prompted the GWC to think more about how it should be directing and controlling the work of that subcommittee?
So yes, so at the most recent meeting, which was Friday, I recall the GWC approved that the department's Deputy Director General chairs that subcommittee to report back regularly to the GWC.
Thank you. Do you know how the GWC decides how much money to contribute to the support of that committee?
No, the previous chair did increase the level of funding support to that committee, but that was without members' awareness. So that's been discussed, and it's going to be in future something that the GWC approves rather than we get told after the decision.
On another topic, did the GWC authorise the Perth Casino to operate the Pearl Room during any lockdown in Perth during COVID?
I don't recall that. During lockdown, which lockdown?
During any lockdown?
No, I don't recall that we authorised that, no.
And then can I ask you about the current relationship between the GWC and the department? There've obviously been changes in personnel in the department, and I just wanted your analysis of whether things were matters of communication and direction and people understanding their roles. Is that improving, not improving, going backwards, going forwards? What's your assessment as a member of the GWC? I'm talking specifically now about the GWC's relationship with the department and its officers.
Commissioner, can you be more specific?
I really want to give you the opportunity to tell the Commission anything, and so in some ways I don't want to be specific. I want to give you the opportunity to tell us about anything you see as particularly favourable, or things you think are still negative, or sorry, I shouldn't say still negative, but are negative about the relationship, just how it's going. If there's nothing you want to tell me, then that's fine.
You know, there's certainly been a number of changes within the department staff, change to the department's Director General. The conflicts, the tensions still exist with that person holding the position of GWC Chair and Department Director General. That is there just by virtue of legislation. The changes that have been occurring in the department, it's certainly had an impact because we rely entirely on the department for support, and there's been a significant turnover of staff. We are all doing the best we can.
And in relation to the current operation of the GWC, are there any changes to the audit program that have been foreshadowed by the GWC or recommended to the GWC by the department? And I'm thinking now I'll be a bit more specific about whether there's any proposal to audit the RSG program at the GWC, or audit the RSG program at the casino, or to audit the AML-CTF program at the casino, anything of that nature?
So we've certainly, that's on our matters that are being actioned by the department. The GWC has certainly requested a number of investigations and reviews into Crown, particularly around AML, into bank accounts. Yes, so this has been requested. Yes, most it has.
Has there been any recommendation or consideration given to auditing Crown's responsible service of gaming program as part of the regular GWC audits of the casino?
I don't recall the Crown's RSG as being a specific item to be audited. No, I don't recall that.
Those were all the questions I had. Was there anything else you wanted to tell the Commission?
Just if there's any further questions.
Well, Mr. Sadler will now be given the opportunity to ask you some questions. But so thank you, Mr. Sadler.
Actually, I have no further questions.
All right. So was there anything, Ms. Fiorentino, before you conclude?
Nothing further.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Fiorentino. Your evidence this afternoon is completed. We will leave the summons in place because the other commissioners have to have the opportunity to review your evidence. They may have some questions arising out of today's evidence, but you're certainly free to leave now. Thank you very much for your help in the Commission's inquiry. Thank you, Council. The inquiry will now adjourn till 10 a.m. tomorrow.
All rise.